Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. We're going to wait just a minute, make sure everybody gets into the room. Looks like we have about 150 people who have signed on, so that's good. Keep coming in. The predictions have ranged anywhere from, I think, about, I don't know, since we're 200 up to 500. How many join us today?
President Armorcast, it was ranged anywhere from the high 200s up to just under 5.
Okay, and I predicted 411. But then again, people are really busy at the end of the semester, so I know that there's a lot happening, and it looks pretty nice outside, so maybe people are going for a walk too. Well, it's good to see everyone. I'll get going, and thanks, Melanie, for chiming in with the help. Thanks for a wonderful year. This is the activities on campus and all of your contributions to making great things happen for our students and for each other continues to amaze me, so thanks for everything that you've done. We had, as you know, last week, the Higher Learning Commission reaffirmation of accreditation peer review team was here. In other words, visitors, 5 visitors from other campuses came to assess us with respect to the accreditation criteria. And I'll just say that they left very impressed with everything that you told them and the active discussions and even the points that were raised that might have been considered critical. They appreciated all of the conversations that happened. They left with positive statements about our strategic planning efforts, our investment in the campus, and our commitments to academic freedom and free speech. And so I anticipate that when we get the draft report back, it'll look very good. There's, as with all of these visits, there's likely recommendations they'll give to us. But in terms of major findings or issues, long-term issues, I think my sense is that we won't see anything like that. In fact, their comments were so positive when they left. So that's really good news. There have been questions that have arisen, and they'll come throughout today in a number of areas. Let me give kind of a Cliff Notes statement about each of these. The legislative session, a couple of questions came up about what are we doing to prepare. So the senior leadership team and others have been putting together proposals for funding certain options or strategic initiatives on campus. At the top of the list is the second phase of the STEM complex to make sure that we get full funding on that particular project. But there's a list of system-wide legislative asks that are coming forward, and we're determining how the UND asks fit into those proposals. In addition, the North Dakota University system has been involved in the discussion or the creation of what's called Envision 2035. It's a long-range 10-year strategic plan, and how we support our students, how we support new programs that benefit the state of North Dakota, how we take care of one another, and how we fund infrastructure changes and so forth. All of these things come together nicely under that Envision 2035 heading. And so there'll be a number of investments that come forward or requests of the legislature there as well. Of course, there's other issues that will emerge, things like we see it nationally, kind of some states are seeing a dismantling of the DEI infrastructure. We will work actively with legislators to make sure that the needs of our campus and our ability to continue supporting principles of respect and dignity and making sure that everybody feels like they have a home here on our campus, that those core concepts and core values are upheld. So that's a legislative session. I had a question about the Vice President for Health Affairs, the Dean of your School of Medicine and Health Sciences, how that process is going. The committee's been working. We've had focus groups on campus. On around mid-July, we'll have the position, I think it's mid-July. If Jen Rogers is here, she could correct me. We'll have the position profile out. Actually, I think, no, the position profile will go out probably in the next week or two, and applications will be due by the middle of July. And then we'll do semifinalist interviews via Zoom and finalist interviews on campus late August, early September, and hopefully have the search wrapped up by mid to late September. So that's moving along. But anytime I talk about bringing in a new dean of the medical school, I have to give my profound thanks to Josh Wynn for his exceptional service to UND over many years. And he will step down from that position. He will stay on faculty here at UND in SMHS, but he's done exceptional work. And I would ask for everybody for a Zoom round of, you can't see each other, so it doesn't really work the same, but a Zoom round of applause for Josh and his leadership of SMHS. So great job, my friend. Yeah, in addition, there's been discussions of housing. Hey, there he is. Josh, say hi. So your image pops up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, President. I appreciate it very, very much.
There we go. Good to see you. There's been discussion of housing issues, and with our new class coming in, it turns out there's high demand on housing for the upcoming fall, which is a really good sign. It means a lot of inbound students, and so that's great news. Just know that Vice President Art Malloy and our housing director Troy Noldner are doing a great job getting the word out. There's some repositioning of students and reassignments of rooms that's currently underway to make sure that we can account for all of our incoming first-year students, and to the maximum extent, the second and third-year students who want to continue to live in its halls. So there might be questions there that I know Vice President Malloy is aboard. Some discussion, you might have seen a video last week. AVP for Human Resources, Peggy Varberg, and I recorded a video talking about the Huron study that's focusing on pay equity on our campus, and undoubtedly there might be some questions today about that. But just know that the current phase that's underway is looking at pay equity with respect to protected classes, and there were 5 lenses: race, gender, age, disability status, and veteran status that Huron looked at. And where the great news is there was no systemic negative impact on any particular group. There were some areas that required deeper analysis, 5 areas in particular, and we can talk more about that if there are questions. But all of those elements, as we work with the deans, we need to work with the deans and the vice presidents to make sure we iron out any issues that might exist. And in the aftermath, we'll make sure that we have kind of full information out to the campus about what we found in that study. And then in addition, the second half of the study is looking at how do we make sure that the pay that we're giving to our employees, faculty and staff, is fair with respect to markets, that what we're paying is a competitive salary. And so there's exceptional work happening there to make sure that we're defining our jobs the right way and then also paying people fairly. So so that's been an important part of the study. That's a long-term effort that will roll out probably later on in this year or the next fiscal year. So wanted to comment on that Huron study. And then finally, I should give a quick update on repatriation. Our Native American ancestors will be heading home soon. We anticipate within the next couple months, the first ancestors, again, colloquially or according to culture, Native American ancestral remains are considered, according to tribal customs, to be the ancestors themselves. And so with due respect and with as much urgency as we could possibly put on this effort, we have good news to report, and that's within the next couple months, ancestors will begin heading to their homes, to their burial place. So that's good news. Trying to think what else. I think I've talked enough until you have questions for me. And so let me turn it over to Melanie Linder, our Vice President for Marketing and Communications. Melanie, thanks for being here. Thanks for hosting today. And over to Vice President Linder.
All right, thank you so much. So I want to thank our U Senate and our Staff Senate for submitting some questions in advance that we're going to start with. And while we're getting to those questions, just put your questions in the Q&A and we'll just get to them as we go through our time together. So the first question we have, is there an updated timeline on the projects that's taken away from the west row of parking spaces in the small parking lot between Carnegie and Babcock? The initial announcement was that the west row would be taken up until January 16th of 2024, but they haven't seen an updated timeline. I'm going to turn that question over to Brian Larson in facilities. Brian, would you answer that?
Yes, the parking adjacent to Carnegie will be occupied throughout this summer as we complete some utility infrastructure work, as well as some of the finishing touches in the Carnegie project. We are anticipating returning nearly all the stalls in that concrete parking lot back to und, APAS, and other permitted parking use for the fall semester.
All right, thanks, Brian. I'm going to leave you on because the next question is also going to be heading your way. And that is the question, someone heard that this morning that the Columbia Road overpass repairs are coming up. They hoped that they were going to keep 2 lanes of the bridge open this summer, but that the following year would be a different story. Can you give us an update on what's going to be happening with the Columbia overpass?
Yes, the City of Grand Forks Engineering Department, as well as the North Dakota Department of Transportation, has a very extensive maintenance project planned for the Columbia Road overpass. So those two entities have shared with us that for the summer of 2024, we should expect that the Columbia Road overpass will be narrowed down to 2 lanes, and that'll be primarily in July and August. Then the bridge will be reopened for full traffic until summer break 2025. In 2025, after UND's commencement, the state DOT and the city is planning to close the overpass completely to do some very extensive maintenance work and reopen the bridge to 2 lanes in time for the 2025 move-in weekend. And then we should expect that the bridge will be down to 2 lanes until approximately October of 2025. And so the city has been providing us regular updates on this project. It's just getting started, and we'll continue to work with marketing and communications to share the information as we get it.
All right, thanks so much. The next question is regarding our relationship with Pearson. I'm going to start by sending this over to Provost Link, and Provost Link, you may have our Vice Provost, Jeff Holmes, also answer this question, but what is the current relationship status with Pearson? People are hearing many programs are moving out of the Pearson program and doing strictly online through UND. Can you give us an update on that?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, and thanks, Vice President Linder. As you suggested, this is going to be a quick handoff to Jeff Holm, who can provide a thorough response to this question. Jeff, over to you.
Thanks, Provost Link, and thanks for whomever submitted the question, because it gives me the opportunity to give everybody an update. And just a quick background for those of you who are newer to the university. In the last strategic plan, the part of the plan was to grow online, and particularly to grow online enrollments in the graduate sector. As part of that, UND did an RFP and selected Pearson Online Learning, which is a division of the Greater International Pearson Company. We started 5 programs over a couple of years in that Pearson partnership. Now, keep in mind what Pearson was doing was really marketing and recruitment. They did provide some instructional design assistance to faculty in some, but not all of those programs. And they also provided 6 student success coaches to all of those programs. As a part of all of those contracts, we had established a minimum enrollment number that allowed either side to opt out of those contracts after 30 months, or essentially 3 years. So one of our programs, or really 2 of them, because they're both in nursing, the Master's of Science in Nursing and also the D&P in Nursing, chose to opt out because although the enrollments were quite high, and I guess I'll stop here. Part of the question was, what kind of impact did it have? In the last few semesters, about a third of our online graduate students have been in a Pearson partnered program. By the way, another little aside, Pearson recently sold Pearson Online Learning to an investment group, and it's been renamed Boundless Learning. So if you hear that term, it's one and the same. But back to the question. So about 30% in the last few semesters of our online students have been in a Pearson partner program. One of our largest was nursing, the master's program in nursing. But nonetheless, the enrollment minimums that we had established in negotiations were not met, and nursing chose to opt out of that program. They are currently in a teach out portion, which means that students that entered as part of that partnership still do receive services from now Boundless Learning. And we do owe a tuition share that was part of the arrangement for those students. But each term, the number of those students will become fewer and fewer, obviously. Cybersecurity and accountancy were two other programs that we had. Actually, Pearson initiated the opt-out in those cases. Minimum enrollments were not met, and the marketing was considered quite expensive for those two programs. Those two programs chose not to do a teach out, but rather to provide a buyout or a lump sum payment to eliminate the tuition share. So there was a cost, an initial upfront cost to end those, but it was because those programs chose to do that rather than to do a teach out. So when those programs ended in the fall of 2023, all of the tuition stays within UND. That leaves the master's program in counseling, which is nearing 200 student enrollment, probably will be there in the fall. They can opt out, as minimum enrollments are still a little higher than the number that they're at. But so far, to my knowledge, a decision has not been made for them. I think I answered all the initial questions, Melanie.
All right, thank you so much. All right, our next question is regarding EERC. So the staff has said that we're taking down some buildings and there's a new addition to the main EERC building. And if that's true, could we hear more about it and when it'll begin? So I'm going to turn that over to Charlie Grecke or Tom Erickson.
All right, thank you, Vice President Linder. Yes, so the EERC, we're actually very excited to be entering into a new capital effort. We are in the process of raising approximately 7 buildings that were on site. These are all legacy buildings that owe back to really before we were or when we were part of the U.S. Department of Energy or even earlier. So they're quite old buildings. We're raising those, and we'll be putting in a new complex called the MADX, or Materials Exploration Facility, that will provide new capabilities for us to do research. In addition to that, we're also modifying the ventilation system in another facility to allow us to do better research and upgrading our electrical distribution system throughout the EERC. Overall price tag for this effort is $30 million. And we are funding it entirely from our cash flow within the organization. So there's no state appropriations for this building. Entirely be paid out of cash flow, just our cash flow, just as you would if you were buying a house yourself. So that's we're real excited. I should just mention we're in the process right now of finalizing the design and hope to actually get moving on construction of the new MADX portion of it itself within the next few months.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. The next question is going to go to our Associate Vice President for Human Resources, Peggy Varberg. Peggy, the question about the Huron compensation study, the question is what factors were considered in the study, such as national versus regional salaries for similar positions? And did we consider any gender equity gaps amongst individuals in similar roles based on years of experience?
Thank you, Melanie. That's a great question. So the pay study focused on the 2 areas that President Armacost discussed. We had a look at disparity in pay regarding the 5 protected class lenses. And that lens was looked at across all areas. So positions that are like or similar. In the faculty world, it would be, rank and discipline and years in rank. So we did sweep through and look at that. And Huron found a few areas, 5 areas that they suggested that we look into a little bit. But as the president spoke about earlier, and in the video, they didn't really find anything that was significantly out of whack, if you will. So that was really great. So what we're doing now is having some questions or having conversations with leaders in those areas. 3 of the areas really had to do with how we appropriately pay or how we make decisions on pay of postdocs. And then we had 2 areas where we just needed to look, ask more questions and dig deeper into the data to see why there may be a difference in an area that could explain why one person was paid who would be similar or same rank, time in position, those kinds of things. Why was there a difference? And so we're working with leaders in those areas now. Melanie, what was the rest of that question? I'm sorry. Apologies.
So the question was about regional versus national salaries for similar positions.
Yes. So our positions, all of our faculty positions and most of our staff positions, our markets are looked at nationally. There are some things where it's regionally or locally. So some positions such as an accountant could be looked at locally or regionally. Positions like an administrative assistant would be looked at most. We would look at salary structures that would be Grand Forks, Fargo, those areas. So all of our positions are outlined in some way based on what our recruiting geography looks like. So faculty positions, executive positions, director positions, those kinds of things tend to have more of a national outlook. So that's where we pull our data from, are the national Coupa or Oklahoma or Educomp market surveys. Whatever the case is, we look mostly at national, high research and doctoral. Those are the cuts of data that we look at. And then again, those positions that would be recruited at more locally or regionally, then we may look at a Coupa, which is college university markets. But if it's a position that's held widely in business in general, we might look at more of a market that's regional and Bureau of Labor Statistics, which would be from employers that would be regionally located that we would, try to attract folks from. So.
All right, thank you so much. And for those who are also have other questions, there's a HR website now just for the Huron study that there's the timeline of the phases. Peggy, I see you're still there. Do you just want to reference that website so people have questions, they can go there?
Yep. So there's more information about the Huron study on that website. It talks about what phases we're in, how many phases there will be, what work we've done, what work we're still doing. And as the president described earlier, it's a long project. So we will have more information. We're working with HR partners now to talk about job profiles and seeing where we have positions that are similar in the nature of their work, where we can combine them more and then build a job architecture for staff specifically. But the website's great. Thank you to Marketing Communications. It's got some good information, and we will continue to update it as we go forward in the project.
Hey, just one additional comment to what Peggy said, and that is particularly on the issue of protected classes and equity in salaries. I appreciate all the patience of leadership across the campus and Peggy and her team. I know it's easy. Everybody wants to see what the data says, but I think we owe it to those work units to be patient. The Huron piece was just the first element. The next element is, given the data that Huron has examined, there might be more data that deans or vice presidents can provide to illuminate what's happening with salaries within their unit. So I just ask for patience on this. When we get all of that worked out, certainly we'll share the information and the outcomes there. So Melanie, back to you. And let me also apologize. I realize I went through like 7 items in 7 minutes in my opening comments. If I went way too fast, my apologies. Feel free to ask follow-up questions on those items that are brought up. Thanks.
All right, thanks, President Armacost. The next question goes back to EERC, so I'm going to call on Charlie Grecki. The question is, what is the Heartland Hydrogen Hub? And what is the und.edu role in the $925 million funding from the Department of Energy? What is the EERC doing, and what is the actual amount of money that comes to UND and EERC for their role?
Well, thank you for the question, Melanie. So the Heartland Hydrogen Hub is one of 7 hubs that were selected by the U.S. Department of Energy for $7 billion in funding to spur the hydrogen economy in the United States. So we were one of 7 selected. $925 million is what we are currently in negotiations with the Department of Energy. And we will have likely between $3 and $4 billion in commercial cost share from our partners. This is a 5-state hub. including North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, South Dakota, and Montana, with the goal of generation of hydrogen for use in fuels, in backup for electrification, for transportation. And hydrogen hasn't really taken off in a big way at this point, and that is the goal of the program. We are, again, still in negotiations with the Department of Energy, and I expect that to conclude sometime in June or July. And then we'll begin the 7-ish year project. It would have our commercial partners are Prairie Horizons, which is a joint venture between TC Energy and Marathon Petroleum, and Xcel Energy. Those would be the primary producers of hydrogen. Xcel would have some production in Minnesota from renewable energy and their Monticello nuclear plant, and also in South Dakota. Again, this is currently under negotiation, but that was the proposed plan. And then in North Dakota from methane reforming with carbon capture and storage by the Dickinson biorefinery would be where TC Marathon would be conducting their portion. Likely the University of North Dakota, EERC, will receive about 10% of the $925 million to manage the program. In addition, we'd likely have a substantial role inside of the Prairie Horizons portion of the project, looking at carbon capture and storage and potentially hydrogen storage. We do have a website on our EERC page. I could certainly talk about this for a lot longer for more information about the Heartland Hydrogen Hub.
All right, thanks, Charlie. Next question is about parking. Parking on campus continues to be a huge pain point. Available spaces are already inadequate to meet needs, and construction in or near lots have been reduced even further to this point that one cannot park reasonably close to where they work. What can we expect to see for some pain relief in the form of real parking solutions? I believe Jenny Duffy is going to answer this question for us.
Unfortunately, there can be a temporary loss of spaces when improvements are made on campus. Parking works with our planning, design, and construction team to try and minimize the impacts of lost parking as much as possible. With the overall parking on campus, UND has been working with Kimley Horn, our parking consultant, since last summer. Kimley Horn will be presenting their recommendations to the Executive Council by the end of May. We do not anticipate any significant changes from the consultant's recommendations to go into effect this fall.
Thank you. The next question is going to go to Mark Johnson in facilities. So thank you, Jenny. It would be helpful if we could provide an update on our health professions study. When will we know which departments are being considered part of that new addition? Mark, are you able to answer that for us?
Yes, thank you, Melanie. Actually, what I'd like to do is defer to Les Biori, who's our director of planning. He's been our lead person from facilities working on this since day one. Les?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Let me start by saying that the study will be finalized on May 10th. And so the health profession study is a multi-phased study, and as such still has fluidity concerning the departments, but I can say that one of the main drivers is the College of Nursing and Professional Disciplines. But the final document will be uploaded to the facility management website and will be available for anyone who wants to take a look at it the afternoon of May 10th. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much. One more question regarding the Huron consulting study. And so I'll ask AVP Varberg to come back on. The question is just around the decision-making process and how we selected Huron to do the study.
Sure, thank you, Melanie. So we worked with procurement. We put an RFP, so request for proposals in. The response time, I think, was about five or 6 weeks for proposals to come in. We had just a few. We didn't have very many. I believe it was 4 or 5, but I'm not 100% sure about that anymore. It was a year ago. So, and we had a review team that looked through the proposals, scored them independently, and then we worked with negotiating with through our procurement office. But Huron was selected because in part they had an excellent presentation for us. They understand the work of higher ed. They understand compensation work. We felt good about the deliverables that they brought to the table, and just seemed to understand exactly what UND was asking for them to do, which was to review protected class, equity in positions, and to help us define job architecture, which for staff specifically, which is important because we have become a very complex university. We have a lot of complex positions. We have a lot of new positions. And so our compensation group has only been working just on compensation for the last 4 years. So we needed to go back. We needed to look at positions that have been around the university for a long time, and we hadn't had a chance to do all that work to really work through how positions work together, where there are positions that are very similar or like across the university that can be put into the same job codes, markets, those kinds of things. We wanted to make sure that people were in the right houses, that they were in the right markets, and being fairly and equitably paid. And Huron brought that to the table. They understood what we were asking for more than the others that we reviewed. So that's the basics of how we got to have Huron as a partner.
Right, thanks, Peggy. The next question I'm going to send to our Vice Provost for Enrollment Management, Janelle Kilgore. Janelle, when does UND anticipate the FAFSA disbursements, both for incoming new students and returning students, to go out?
Hi, everybody. Janelle Kilgore, not Provost Link. I was having some technical difficulty, but thanks for the question. It is a really good one. It's one that our student finance team and myself and our admissions team are continuing to track and look at. We were finally able to get FAFSA applications and FAFSA data for current and incoming students loaded into our system. Our goal is to actually hopefully have new freshman award letters going out the door by the end of next week, which is really, really exciting. Our student finance team is working really hard to be able to get cost of attendance, scholarships uploaded, and all of those different types of things. So that way we can have our official award letters going out next week. So really exciting, very much delayed. We have been working and communicating with our new students and families on this delay. I will say we are still going to be the first one in the state of North Dakota who will actually have award letters going out the door next week, which is exciting, and kudos to our team for that. They've been working with CTS to make sure that all of the data feeds and the updated formulas and all of those different types of things are working appropriately and modifying as needed, but really strong indication that we will have everything going out the door next week. Returning students will actually not change. Typically, we wait until after spring grades are posted because there are some federal financial aid programs that are grade level specific. And so typically we send those to students the first week of June, along with their department scholarships and things like that. So that the returning students aren't going to see a delay in that process. So really kind of exciting from that standpoint. If I may, Melanie, just really one quick thing. The student finance team is rolling out a new refund system. So students who get a refund from the university, whether that be financial aid, whether that be they've dropped a course or withdrew from the university. We had worked with Bank Mobile for about 10 years, and now we are working with a new company called Nelnet. We have them for other systems. And so students are getting notification right now to go update their refund preference. We have, I think, about 3,500 students who've already gone in and updated their refund preference. But so if you're hearing from students or seeing students getting questions on, they've gotten a notification about going into Campus Connection to add their bank information or whatever account they want to receive their refund, that would be why. It is because our contract with Bank Mobile has expired, and we have been with them for about 10 years. So we're really happy with the new product, but it is something that is real. We're not just asking for random information. It's for us to be able to get any excess financial aid to them as quickly as possible.
All right, thank you, Janelle. The next question I'm going to send it to President Armacost first, so he may have others chime in as well. President Armacost, what is UND's position on the Palestinian solidarity encampments happening at so many other universities and institutions? How is UND working to support our students, especially protect their right to protest?
That's an amazing question, and certainly the images from across the U.S. have captured all of our attention. We have been very clear. I know I've been very clear, and the leadership at UND has been very clear about our support to free expression, the right to free speech, and the right to academic freedom. And those are core principles that our university will continue to hold dear. I will not offer specific comment about the political differences that exist, whether it's in Israel and Gaza or elsewhere around the world. But just know my primary objective, our primary objective, is to ensure the health and safety and the free expression rights of people on this campus. All of the messages that we've put out, whether by video or in writing, have really focused on that right to safety, that importance of keeping people well protected. We recognize the emotional burden that many of our students, faculty, and staff are bearing when they see the news from their homelands or related places, perhaps close to where they hail from. So it's important for us to keep the health and safety of people on campus first and foremost. As far as protest and the rights to demonstrate, I just want to draw people's attention. And as you advise one another or advise students, if they're considering exercising their rights to free expression, we do have a policy. It's called events, demonstrations, fixed exhibits, and short-term rentals, all rolled into one. And there's key elements there about time, place, and manner of using one's voice to express ideas, about the need to do it with respect and not to make threats towards others. So if one is considering some form of demonstration or public statement, please follow the rules there. You can work with our AVP for Public Safety, Chief Rodney Clark, who's also on here as well. And then I think I'll leave it at that. But just I'll actually turn it over to Vice President Art Malloy, who will come some of the step taking to build that sense of affinity and inclusion on the campus. And we have great support from our International Center. We have great support from our faculty and staff, from advisors, from our Office of Diversity and Inclusion and Student Diversity and Inclusion. So a whole lot of avenues for support. Art, over to you.
Well, President Armacost, I certainly don't have a whole lot more to add. I think you answered that question quite well. I will say we certainly have offices that are supporting our students, and the Office of Student Affairs is open every Tuesday from 8 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. That's for students to just walk in if they have concerns, if they have issues that they would like for us to take up. They can certainly do that. For student groups that are dealing with this and it's stressful for them, they can certainly have conversations with our counseling center. They can do that as individuals. They can also do that and have group sessions also. So I think there's adequate support for our student groups, and I think the most important thing is that we don't wait until there's an issue. We constantly reach out to the students. I've reached out to the students on both sides of this, myself also via email, just to let them know that they have my full support, and anything that we can do to help them, we're certainly prepared to actually do that. I don't think I have anything else to add other than what President Armacost has said. We would like for the students to follow our policies in case they'd like to do. And if they want to stage a protest, if they want to demonstrate, we have policies, and as long as they read our policies, they will know exactly what to expect.
Right, thank you so much. The next question I'm going to send back to our Associate Vice President Peggy Varberg again. It's regarding when looking at pay differentials across groups at UND, are we looking into how service work is incentivized and monetized? Traditionally, women do more of this work, which is really considered in terms of promotion or pay raises. How is UND working to make service workloads more equitable across all genders and also more valuable in terms of counting towards promotion and pay?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. With the Huron pay study, we looked more from a faculty perspective at discipline and rank, and they did not do a deep dive into the effort breakdown for faculty. But I think I appreciate the question, and I think this is something that we should take a further look at. And so we will work with the provost and with the vice president of health affairs regarding this question.
All right, thank you so much. The next question is for President Armacost. President Armacost, there have been numerous reports concerning the loss of tenured faculty nationwide in higher education. In general, what is your opinion regarding the issue of tenure at present and going forward for UND faculty?
Great, wonderful question. And of course, questions of tenure arose in the last legislative session as well. My opinion of tenure is it's a needed element of our campuses. It's an important component to promote academic freedom. The benefits and the support offered by tenure allows all of our scholars or those who have tenure and sends a signal to others that we encourage and support inquiry, whatever direction that inquiry takes you. So it's important to that principle of academic freedom. I have been vocal in both on the legislative session and in the aftermath that retaining tenure at UND and other institutions is vital. Of course, the system, the North Dakota University system, has an ad hoc committee that's looking at the future of post-tenure review and also some aspects of tenure as well. I don't think there's a threat at all to tenure here at UND. And I do think that there probably will be some expectations that we have a well-defined process of post-tenure review to make sure that those great characteristics that we love in our faculty members continue throughout one's career. So that commitment to our students, that commitment to discovery, and the commitment to serve the institution. So I again, I'm a huge fan of tenure. The most creative people on college campuses I found are those with tenure because they can exercise and move fluidly in new areas of inquiry that they might be kind of prevented from when they're in their first 6 years trying to get tenure. So let me, I know our provost is here too. Eric, we often talk about this issue together, and I think the crowd would probably appreciate your thoughts as well. So over to you.
Thank you, President Armacost, and I appreciate the question. I certainly want to underscore everything that the President just articulated. Our position at UND has been consistent for the past several years that we value tenure and do not want to see tenure rights eroded at our institution. As the President indicated, currently it does not appear that the current work coming out of the State Board of Higher Education Ad Hoc Committee on Post-Tenure Review will adversely affect tenure as an institution on our campus, but it will require us to continue our work examining post-tenure review policies, and we will certainly do so. This work has been ongoing. We have certainly during the last legislative session and in a number of conversations, both internal and external to the university regarding these issues, we have been advocating on behalf of the preservation of tenure as a vital component of University of North Dakota's operations. We are certainly looking closely at any policy change that is proffered across the system that might affect that institution. We are looking to make sure that we preserve tenure, that we preserve shared governance, and that we preserve faculty rights of redress when needed. So that work is ongoing, and I want to commend not only President Armacost for his leadership, but also my team, and specifically Randy Tanglin, who's been out in front on this issue as well. President Armacost, I don't know, back to you, and I also see a hand up from Dr. Nguyen.
I'm going to deflect it over to Vice President and Dean Josh Nguyen. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Provost and President Armacost. I would just add that I think one of the things that we can do, particularly in regards to the legislature, is education. So as an example, our Associate Dean for Research, Dr. Colin Combs, actually looked at the productivity from a research standpoint of our faculty, and he found very clearly that the people in the tenure track and tenured faculty members are among the most productive from a research productivity point of view. So I think sharing data like that with the legislature and other interested parties helps buttress the idea of why tenure is important, and why I think all of us in leadership roles at the university believe it is important, and important for the future of the organization. So educating in a non-threatening way, but just sharing data as to the productivity of tenure-tracked and tenured individuals, I think will help reduce some of the tension over this issue. So thank you for letting me comment.
All right, thank you all for that. The next question I'm going to send back over to Brian Larson again, and it's back to the Columbia Bridge closure. The statement is, I'm afraid it will still impact UND, as most staff are here all summer long, as well as some faculty and some students and the administration. With the horrible delays on 42nd by the train stopping traffic completely for extended amount of time, the only routes to take would be the interstate or Washington Street, which will not only be inconvenient, but worrisome in case of an emergency. How is this being addressed?
Yeah, thank you, Melanie. We've been in communication with the city traffic engineer, and he has let us know that they're continuing to coordinate the planning for next summer with the DOT, but the current plan as it stands is to utilize the interstate as the emergency route from the hospital to campus, knowing that that'll be uninterruptible. And as we continue to get more information from the state DOT and the city engineering office, we'll share that with campus as well.
All right, thank you so much. The next question I'm going to send back over to Peggy Varberg again, and it's, what are we doing for the retention of our current employees and hiring of new employees on campus right now? This individual's department is down several positions. Employees, they say, are just keep leaving. And what are we doing in the way of, they're doing the same work or more work for the same salary, though enrollment is up. So can you answer that question?
Yep, I sure can. Thank you. Or I'll try at least. Thank you. So recruiting is an issue nationally still. It's an issue locally in North Dakota. We have more positions than we have people. And the university is no different than that. We don't feel the same effect because we still are able to recruit positions and folks into our university at a fairly good pace. And I will say that we have begun in the last 6, 7, 8 months to see more and more applications, good quality applications for many of our positions. So there's always going to be some that will be a challenge because of the focus of what it does and the uniqueness of some positions. We definitely are looking at retention. We have many conversations with leaders across the university. They come to us to ask, what can we do? What are our options? And so we do work through that with folks. We have a great eye on that. I mean, it is an issue for UND, like, again, every other employer in our area. And some of that is because of the nature of where we live. So we can't change that, but we can change the climate and the culture of the university. And there's been significant changes the last 4 years of how people feel about their work here, how they feel attached to meaningful work. And those are conversations that we all still need to continue to have. But I am hopeful with the increase of applications that we're receiving now. We had a couple of IT positions that we had struggled with in the past that saw a tremendous uptick in good quality applications and other areas as well. Finance is an area that we've struggled a bit, but we've sort of turned a corner there in some of those areas. So that's really great. Appreciate that.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to go back to parking. So this question is going to go to Jennifer Duffy. Jennifer, what is the long-range plan for guest parking at the Pollard and the new athletic facilities north of the Pollard? Many school buses and personal vehicles are parked on the street during recent track events. And then in addition to that question, are there any plans to build new parking lots on campus?
Both of these are items that our consultant is looking at. They're looking at we're looking at their recommendations to kind of provide some solutions to parking on the east side of campus. And then also the consultant has done a parking utilization study of campus and looking where the highest utilization is. And so that any recommendations regarding like new lots, we would really look to where look to the consultant's recommendations, I guess, on where those would be most needed.
Jennifer, do you have an idea on the timing of that, of when that will be shared?
Sorry, clicking on and off there. The consultant's recommendations will be going to EC by the end of May. And I don't anticipate any significant changes this fall. I don't have a timeline. I don't anticipate any changes significant changes before fall of 2025.
Thank you so much. The next question, I'm going to send it back to start with to Peggy Varberg. To start, we talked about the process if there were to be protests on campus, but this question is about what about the protection of Jewish students, faculty, and staff on our campus?
We have processes if folks are, I'll also probably share this with the president and with Rodney Clark in terms of physical protection and what the university may offer. To repeat what President Armacost has said, all need to be treated fairly. We all need to be cared for and looked after, and our university community needs to be a part of that scenario. We do have processes through our equal opportunity office. So if someone feels like they're being treated differently being discriminated against because of any of those factors, then I would encourage them to reach out to our Assistant Vice President for Equal Opportunity, Donna Smith, and her group that will help work through any concerns that they may have from that perspective.
Great, thanks, Peggy. Let me clarify my earlier comments. I made a statement about regardless of the position of who's demonstrating, the university has a content neutral position. So my earlier comments were addressing both the free speech rights of one side or the other side. So I hope that was clear that I'm not in a position to do anything except protect those free speech rights and protect the health and safety of the members of the campus. So if one is to feel threatened, if it's a student, there are options to go through our Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities with Dr. Alex Pokarnowski. I don't know if Alex is on, but certainly Art Malloy is here. He can chime in as well. But we will make sure that if any exercise of free speech somehow creates a disruption to health and safety, that we take appropriate action to diminish any threats to people on the campus. So Art, over to you.
Yes, for sure. There are several ways that if a student feels like if a student doesn't feel safe, there are several opportunities for them to let us know. I think we have a care team on campus, and that care team that the process works the same way that it's always worked. If you believe that you are not safe because of something that someone has done, you simply need to let us know. And we certainly work with we work with Chief Clark also, just to make sure that that we investigate all issues that are brought to us. So that's mainly for students. I think Peggy has already talked about what can be done for faculty and staff, but I do believe we have a very, very caring community for our students, and we don't just wait. Again, like I said, we don't wait until something happens. We try to be very proactive with this, and we respond to all emails that students send us, and we respond to anything that's brought to any of our offices. So again, if you know of students that for whatever reason don't feel safe, please make sure that I know that, and I'll make sure that it gets to the right place. You can certainly also contact Dean Pokanowski also, but we have several avenues just that are designed just to deal with those types of issues. So but they can certainly start with me.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, this question is going back to Peggy. Peggy, what can we expect for the range of merit pay percentages this year?
That's a great question. Thank you. So for the legislators gave us a 4% pool of money to be able to provide to our leaders to make decisions based on merit and market. Each employee should be receiving, who meet expectations, should be receiving at least a 2% increase. And then our leaders have the opportunity to provide up to a 6% increase based on any market moves that need to be made to ensure that they're in at least in their minimum range, but also to include merit opportunities as well for performance-related reasons. So, and I do encourage you to speak with your area leaders or your area divisional vice president if you have more questions.
All right, thank you so much. Peggy, I'm going to keep you on just for a little bit longer because the next question is, will the job architecture include a process to retain staff? This individual has commented it's getting harder and harder to retain staff when new positions are posted at UND that require less minimum experience requirements, less responsibility, and pay more than the staff in those current positions with 5 years or more of experience.
Yes, that's a great question. So the job architecture for staff work is going on now. And as I mentioned earlier, we're looking through profiles. We're doing job profiles. And so we'll take the positions that are like or similar and really be able to coordinate them into sort of one group, if you will. Right now, we could have a person who is an account tech in different areas across the university, and they could be being paid differently. And so we're taking a look at how that all can be put together so that it's consistent pay across the university. So if you're doing the same work as someone else or very similar work as someone else, it's consistent pay. The job architecture that's going to be built will bring together like or similar positions so that they're in the same profile or similar profiles, and we'll be able to build a career pathway, which I'm really excited about. And we've had folks ask us about that. It's not really a career ladder, it's a pathway, because if you are interested in learning where you can go in the accounting field, you may need to do a lateral move to learn certain skills that will help you move up in a career field. But the job architecture is going to be really helpful. We will, as someone had asked us earlier, do we see any positions being cut, any people being cut, any reductions in force? No. Not as a function of the pay study or anything we're doing with it. But we will go from having 700 different types of positions and through this process of really bringing like or similar positions together, be able to move that into more manageable chunks of more like 400 and some types of positions. But again, that's not through the loss of a position in terms of a person. We're not reducing in force. None of that is happening. But it makes more sense. It will be easier for all of us to understand, to articulate. And so for retention of our folks, you'll be able to see, here's where you can go, here's what you can do, and here's the investment that the university is making in that specific role. So what your earning potential could be as you move and make these moves. That's also going to be really, it's, number one for us is the retention. And number two, though, is to give someone who's outside of the university an idea of what they could do to attract them to come to work with us.
So Peggy, one question that's related to that is, are years of experience outside of UND considered in that?
So as we, sorry, outdoor emergency. As we hire, either hire people into new positions, either from outside of the university or internal to the university, we always look at what the directly related experience is that they're bringing to that position. So outdoor emergency broadcast system. That's where sometimes we do see a difference in pay. If we look at two people that are sitting in, like we may have two people that were hired in, and one may have a higher salary, it's because they're bringing in directly related experience from outside. But also internally. So if I were to apply for a position that's different than this one, but I have a lot of experience already, we do make that distinction. We do look at that with regard to where they should be placed as a higher and offer salary or in their market. So those are always a factor in terms of time and position and what experience they're bringing in.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we're at time, so I'm going to turn this back over to President Armacost to close us out. President Armacost, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Vice President Linder. Appreciate your leadership always and running a great session here. We peaked at 310, at least that's the number I saw. So a great number of folks chimed in today. Great questions. We spanned a whole bunch of different topics. And I thank you for the probing questions. Of course, what interests people the most are these very human elements. Not only how am I getting paid or how do we keep one another safe on our campus, but where do I park? And so just know that first and foremost, the well-being of the members of our campus is at the absolute top of our priority list. And we will keep that in mind as our core guiding value as we continue to make decisions for the benefit of the University of North Dakota. So all have a great week. Commencement's coming up. Congratulations to all of our students who are graduating this year. And thanks to the faculty and staff members who brought them to this point. Well done. We'll see you soon.